Hello and welcome to this webinar on the maturity model according to two products from PeopleCert, one called P3M3 and one is ITIL. My name is David Biu and will be your presenter today, and let's dive into the topic. And of course, if you have any questions, you will have some times at the end of this the presentation to ask them, and it will be my pleasure to sit down and to discuss that with you. Okay, so what you can see in the slide is, in fact, the idea of this webinar is how we can, in fact, use this ITIL and or, because it can be used both or one of them, P3M3, to assess the level of maturity in organization on specific topic. So for ITIL, it will be on service management. For P3M3, it will be more for project, portfolio, program capabilities. About One World Training, a big organization which organized this webinar. As you can see in this slide, it's a global training and business simulation and a company with offices worldwide and a lot of accreditation with PeopleCert in products like Prince2 on project management, ITIL, but also Scrum, and other accreditation from the Service Institute, the Project Management Institute, and so on and so on. So you are in good hands with One World Training. Let me cover the agenda for today. So what we will see is, after a small introduction on ITIL and P3M3, why maturity assessments, why they are important, and what they are about. So we will see, we have an overview of the ITIL maturity model, then an overview of P3M3 maturity model. Then we will compare ITIL versus P3M3 to see in which case we can combine them, in which case one is more applicable than the other, okay? And then we will go into the details about conducting a maturity assessment. Okay, so we will see the maturity assessment process and how we can help you at the end with One World Training, because I am an official assessor for ITIL and P3M3 maturity model at One World Training. Okay. So let's start with the small introduction on ITIL and P3M3. So we'll have a short view of these two products and an overview of maturity assessment. So when we look at the little bit history, we can see, in fact, the history of ITIL and the history of P3M3. So ITIL, originally meant to be information technology infrastructure library. You see that the first release, or the first version, was released in 1989, which is now 35 years ago. And currently we are in the fourth version of this, let's say, set of best practices. And this version 4 was released in 2019. The main focus of ITIL is service management, okay? So it means it's about managing services, IT services to organization, okay, within one organization. So that means for internal customers or in the market for external customers. ITIL 4, that's the name of this last version, includes different elements. 4 dimensions. What are the 4 dimensions? We use them in the maturity model, by the way. And the 4 dimensions are, in fact, ensuring a holistic approach to the resources you use to deliver services. What are these 4 dimensions? Organization and people, so human resources, value streams and processes, all the activities that you need to manage services, partners and suppliers, the ecosystem you use to deliver and manage services, and information and technology, the data, the tools that you use to deliver services. So if you think like that, the 4 dimensions really give you a holistic view. So that means a complete view of the resources you need to allocate, to manage and deliver services. Another part of ITIL 4 is the service value system. And the service value system is the business model of IT according to ITIL. What it means? It means that this is a full model that can help IT service provider to enable value from the services and to react to any demand on opportunity that are in fact identified for services. And one key part of the service value system is the service value chain, which is in operating model. So in fact, in the business model, we treat the why. In the operating model, we treat the how, which activities we need in order to be sure that we always offer the most suitable services for our stakeholders or the consumers of the service. So this is about ITIL. Another, I would say, product which is important in this webinar, it's P3M3. P3 because we talk about portfolio, program, project, and it's M3 because it's maturity model management. So P3M3. So the first version was released in 2005. Now the current version, which is the version 3, was released in 2021, roughly at the same time as ITIL 4. Okay, and as I said, it's focused on how we manage portfolio, program, and projects. So we have 3 models, maturity model in P3M3, one for portfolio management, one for program management, one for project management. For each of these models, we use 7 perspectives. So that means some group of processes in order to scope the assessment of the maturity. And then we use some attributes that are, in fact, for instance, like attributes about financial management for a project and so on, that help us to conduct a complete assessment of how mature an organization is managing its project, program, and or portfolio. Okay, so it's about P3M3. So the maturity assessments, why they are important and what they are. So we know that, in fact, maturity assessment exists for a long time. In fact, it comes from the idea that we need to have an objective view of how we can improve, in fact, the services, the way we manage projects, because we always need to be ahead from our competitors. We always need to have, we always face, I would say, the pressure of the customer on the services we deliver that include new projects to improve them, include new portfolio or adjustment in the portfolio we need to manage, include program that give us the direction and the blueprint on what we need to deliver in the future. So if you can't measure where you are now, it will be very difficult for you to establish where you want to be. So the maturity assessment really helps answering the question, where are we now? How performant we are now? How we perform today? And can we have the means of our ambitions for tomorrow? So that's why the maturity assessments are based on capability. Are we capable to meet the challenges of tomorrow with the capacity of today? This is maturity assessment. And we see that in service management, in project management, in program management, in portfolio management. So as I said, we emphasize this importance of maturity assessment. Okay, so from the point of view of an organization, maturity assessments are in fact important because it can really help them doing their own SWOT analysis, at least identify their internal strengths and weaknesses. And it's more like, it's more than just having, for instance, an ISO certification. Because if you think 2 minutes about that, maturity assessment is a different approach like a certification. So if you are a service provider, for instance, you can go for an ISO 20000 certification, which can give you an objective view of the quality of the services you manage. That's good. On the other hand, maturity assessment in service management will give you in a very detailed way where you are in terms of capability and where you can still improve. In an ISO certification, you will be either yes or not. You answer yes or no to the question, am I compliant with the certification requirements? In a maturity assessment, you say, okay, I am at level 2. So what can I do to be at maturity level 3? So it gives you much more information about how you can improve. And it's not just about being compliant with a standard. Okay, so it's I would say, another approach that can be used also independently or in combination. One of the main, I would say, benefit of maturity assessment is really the idea of this continuous improvement that is guided. You really know where you are now, and you really know how you can have a phased approach to improve the performance of the specific area that you assess. Okay, that is very important. So let's now have a look at more in detail at the maturity model within this webinar. The first one is ITIL maturity model. So let's see, in fact,
you can see an overview of the scope of the ITIL maturity model. As I said previously, ITIL 4 is based on a business model called the service value system. And that's what you can see here, the service value system. And in fact, this service value system is the core of the maturity model. In other words, when we assess the maturity of an organization related to service management, this assessment is based on the 5 elements or components of the service value system that you can see here. The guiding principles, the 7 guiding principles, which are the rules for service management according to ITIL 4. The governance, which means, in fact, how an organization is directed and controlled. So all the governance body and how it works. Service value chain, where you have all the activities, the main activities that lead to value. So that means the activities related to maintain, to create new services. and new products. Practices, we have 34 practices, and for each of the practices, based on the scope of the assessment, you can choose the practices that are the more accurate. And for each of them, the ITIL maturity model has a very long and detailed set of questions that assess the capability of practice. At a level of practice, we talk about capability. At a level of the service value system, we talk about maturity and the continual improvement, which is one part of this model. And as you can see here, when we assess the maturity, we assess it at different levels. From level 1, which is initial level, meaning that some things happen, but they are not standardized, and the result is not always the same, up to the level 5, which is the optimizing level, where in fact the processes or all the elements you can see are described, understood, shared within the organization, measured, and continually improved.
Now let's have a look at the overview of P3M3. So P3M3, as I said, in fact, is not built around a particular body of knowledge. You know, ITIL is a product. P3M3 uses different, let's say, approach, but it's not like P3M3 is solely based on Prince2. No, P3M3, it's project, program, portfolio management. So in people said there are some specific product for that. There is a product called Prince2 that gives you information about how you can manage successful project. There is MSP, managing successful program, and there is MOP, management of portfolio, which you can use in order to manage the portfolio.
The P3M3 maturity model consists in different components. As you can see here, we have the components of this maturity model. So we have in fact 3 models. One is for portfolio management, one is for program management, one is for project management. All these models share the same perspective, so that means in fact the area of focus that need to be assessed in any case. So organizational governance, you see it relates to governance in the service value system. Is the same idea in ITIL maturity model. Management control, so governance sets the rules, management make them apply. Benefits management, so how we manage the benefits from the project, program, and portfolio. Risk management, stakeholder management, how we identify and engage with the program, project, or portfolio of the organization. The finance management, so in order to be sure that we, for instance, have enough funding for the project, programs, or portfolios. And resource management, so with human resources, technical resources, financial resources. And in fact, for each of these models you can see here, so that means the portfolio, the program, and the project, we have a set of attributes. The attributes are the questions that are used to assess, and these attributes are grouped into threads. So thread is a more detailed level than the perspective, and we can have up to 13 different threads. You can see it here. So for some of this assessment, we will also assess asset management. So that means all the assets that are managed or created within a project. Commercial, for instance, management arrangements are contracts with external suppliers. Infrastructure and tool, model integrations, how we integrate the project management, I would say, model into the organization. Is it just in one part of the organization? Is it in all the organization? Is it in one specific, for instance, geographical area, and so on and so on. So this model is very rich in terms of contents and very modular. Okay, but if you choose, for instance, a model called project management, then the assessment will be based on these 7 perspectives that you can see here. And for the 7 perspectives, we will go through all the 13 threads.
I am an expert in the field of project management. By the way, I'm an expert in project management and in service management. I didn't say that, co-author of ITIL 4 book on IT asset management. Okay, so I think that, as I say in the beginning, you are in good hand with One World Training as a partner for your maturity assessment, for your own maturity assessment, or for maturity assessments you want to conduct in your partner ecosystems.
What are additional benefits of P3M3 maturity model? So, for instance, the idea is not only to assess where you are, but based on where you are and when you want to be, to define a real plan for improvement. Okay. It also helps you and your organization to make what we call a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So, and specifically, we will focus on the internal aspect of the organizations, meaning the threats and the weaknesses. If you have the detailed information about your level of maturity, it can help you also in seeing how beneficial P3M infrastructure is important. So it will justify investment in this. It will help you, of course, to demonstrate the quality to support proposal for prospective clients, because in fact you will get an objective measure of your level of maturity in project management or in program management and or in portfolio management. And at the end of the day, it will lead to decreasing cost and increasing benefits.
That for whom this maturity model is. So it can be for different people. You see, it can be from the middle management, the top management. It's of course for people managing programs, portfolio, project. It can be for the project management office or center of excellence, in order to have an objective view of what they can improve. It can be for auditors. It can be for bid managers wishing to assess their organization. So, in fact, it is intended to be for quite a large, I would say, audience. So now that we had the look at the ITIL maturity model and the P3M3 maturity model, let's see more in detail how we can compare them. So when I was talking about ITIL, you remember I said that in the maturity model, that the maturity model scope is the service value system. And as you can see here, in the maturity model and in the scope of the maturity model according to ITIL, we have practices. I told you that in ITIL 4, we have 34 practices. So theoretically, we can assess up to 34 practices. Obviously, in a maturity model, we assess, if you want to have the full assessment, you assess 12 practices out of 34. Right?
What is in common, or if we make this comparison between ITIL and P3M3, we can see, in fact, as we say, that in ITIL maturity model that you can see here, the scope of it, we have practices. And I told you that there are 34 practices. Within these practices, we have 2 specific practices called portfolio management, project management. And in fact, these two practices are models in the P3M3 maturity model. So in fact, that what it means that P3M3 is focusing on some part of practices or that are defined, or some practices that are defined in the service value system. Okay, because here portfolio management, project management, from the point of view of ITIL, we have a list of questions for these practices. From the point of view of P3M3, each of them, portfolio management, project management, is a specific model that can be fully assessed through perspectives and threads.
If you want to have a more detailed, I would say, maturity model on portfolio and project management, then you can use P3M3. Because P3M3, you have three models. One is for portfolio management, one is for program management, and one is for project management. And you see that project and portfolio management are practices in ITIL 4. So if you want to have a more detailed, let's say, assessment of the maturity in both practices from ITIL, then you can go for P3M3. Okay, so it's a way to combine them if you want. So of course there are some situations where it depends. You know, for instance, ITIL, it's more suitable when an organization is, of course, delivering or consuming IT services. By the way, I think that nowadays any organization is somehow consuming IT services. So that's why ITIL, I would say, it's something that can be very useful in many cases. P3M3 is more when we are focusing on how we can perform in terms of project management, and of course, project alone, program alone, but also as part of a portfolio. Okay. So when we integrate both models, then we have a complete, I would say, view, management approach, holistic. Because in fact, as we saw, we combine, in fact, the service value system, which is the business model of IT, and with the model on project, program, portfolio. So at the end of the day, when we combine these, when we have this holistic management approach, it means that combining ITIL and P3M3 maturity model give you an assessment on service, project, program, portfolio management. And with that, I assume and I believe that you cover 90% of the capabilities you have as an IT service provider. Okay? And maybe beyond that. It enhanced overall efficiency. Of course, we have a better efficiency because you can have project and IT services managed more in a harmony or synchronized way. So just imagine that, for instance, when you will have services and when you manage different versions of a service, you can manage different versions of a service using change enablement. Each change is managed as a project, and project is managed according to a project management methodology that has been assigned using P3M3. So you can really, have a comprehensive view of how you can improve overall release management based on information from ITIL, information from P3M3. So that's why it improves service and project delivery. You have a better strategic alignment. Don't forget that when we talk about P3M3, we talk about programs, and program and portfolio, it's about strategic alignment. Portfolio, it's about allocating the resources to valuable things. Program, it's about defining valuable things according to the strategy. Okay, so that's why, in fact, you have a better strategic alignment. Of course, you can manage, you have better risk and issue management. an enhancement performance measurement, because you perform according to a certain level, and then where you can. And as I said, stakeholder communication, for instance, it's also one of the perspectives. So because it's always the same problem, whether you talk about service management or you talk about project, program, portfolio management, one of the key success factors is identifying, engaging with the right stakeholder at the right time. And P3M3 maturity model, ITIL maturity model can really assess the way you engage with the stakeholder, the way you identify them, and how you can improve on that field. Here we have some case studies and real-world application. As I said to you, ITIL maturity model exists now for quite a long time. I mean, it was created, the last version was created just after the release of ITIL 4. And we are in the version 3 of P3M3, released in 2021. So we already have some real cases that exist, for instance, for the transport of London, okay? So they used ITIL to manage their IT services, but they also use this P3M3 to assess and improve their project and program management maturity, okay? And it led to some real savings at their level. Cognizant, which is a big organization, a big their project management practice, to manage their project management practice, okay? Another example, Petrobras in Brazil, okay? So they use ITIL to manage their IT services, and they also adopted P3M3 to assess and enhance their project management maturity. Okay, so we have different examples from different organizations, from different parts of the world, some public-owned organization, private-owned organization, IT service provider, IT service consumers, or not at all, that uses this maturity model in ITIL, in P3M3, in order to improve. Have a look at the it means, in fact, to conduct a maturity assessment. So we will see, in fact, the ITIL maturity model approach, and then the P3M3 maturity assessment approach. So let's start with ITIL. So in fact, the general approach is very similar to, I would say, some assessment or audits, if we talk about an ISO standard. So what we do is that we have a documentation review that can be on-site, that can be a preliminary one. So we review the documentation, in fact, that helps us to have a first overview of the service value system or part of it, because an organization mainly doesn't have a pure documentation on the service value system, but they have documentation on their processes, they have documentation on their governance model, they have documentation on their operating model, and so on and so on. So we make a documentation review that helps us to define the right interview that needs to do, and the observations that we can compare with the documentation we review. And in parallel to that, we have a look at the systems. So for instance, the ITSM tool, and all that will give us information for that we need in the assessment. So it's based on these three elements: the documentation review, interviews and observations, and systems and records. Here we have an overview of the maturity assessment. I will not go into the details, but what we can see here in terms of stakeholder is that we have the customer, we have the assessor, which is in fact which is myself in our case, and then we have the verifier in Axelos, because we are using, as we are an ACP, we have access to the Axelos tool to conduct the audit. And this is the tool that we can use in order to conduct the interview for the assessment, and Axelos, once he approved, in fact, the report that we created at the end of this assessment, can issue a certificate, in fact, for the customer. Okay, and this certificate is valid for 3 years, and each year there is a reassessment to make sure that the customer is still in line with what has been assessed. It's a quite similar process for P3M3, where we also have the same stakeholders. Of course, in P3M3, we can have, and I will not see that in details, but we can have also some self-assessment. But the main thing is that as we are ACP, we have access to this complete list of attributes, so that means questions in P3M3 that we can use for each of the models. So that means for project management, for program management, for portfolio management. And now, 1 or 2 words for, because this webinar is conducted by One World Training. And as I told you, I am an assessor of One World Training, which is an accredited consulting partner. Okay. So why choose them? Because it's one of the SAP, so we are authorized to perform ITIL and P3M3 maturity and assessment. Okay, so that means that you have something that is official. One thing which is important is not only the fact that One World Training is an ACP, but the fact that I am an assessor, but also an experienced, I would say, practitioner in service management, project management, program management, portfolio management. We can really help you, guiding you in the continual improvement plan. Because as I said, you have an assessment. The assessment is about what is the current situation and where you can go to improve. And we can guide you, and we can also help you with training, with consultancy, to move from level 2 to level 3 in some particular practices, or in some particular fields, or in some particular thread, as we say in P3M3. Okay, so it's not only about having some regular assessment, it's about having a partner that can help you along your continual improvement journey. Okay? And of course, there are hundreds of ACP globally, but only there are not so many that have this capability to help you in both fields at once, in service management field with ITIL, and in project program portfolio field on the other hand. And I think that, so what we saw, we had an overview of ITIL maturity model, P3M3 maturity model. We saw why it's important to have maturity assessment, why and how it works. We saw the benefits. We saw when it can be a good idea to combine ITIL and P3M3 maturity model. We had some example of organizations who did that, who used both maturity models. And we had an overview of the maturity assessment process.